You don't imagine those conversations because you're bored. You do it because some part of you is trying to stay safe. Right now, as you're listening, there's probably a scene playing in your head. Something that hasn't happened yet. A future moment. A conversation you're already rehearsing. You're choosing your words carefully. You're imagining their face, their tone, the pause before they respond. And there's this tight feeling in your chest. Because you're not just imagining the conversation. You're imagining how it could go wrong. You've always done this. Late at night, when the world is quiet, when your phone screen goes dark, when there's nothing left to distract you from your own thoughts, you play it out again. And again, you change the wording. You soften your voice. You explain yourself better this time. Because somewhere deep inside you, there's a fear that if you don't prepare, something bad will happen. Not dramatic bad, just quietly painful bad. Being misunderstood, being dismissed, being seen the wrong way, being rejected without anyone ever saying the word. So you imagine the future over and over, as if thinking hard enough could protect you. And here's the part you don't usually admit, even to yourself. These imagined conversations aren't about winning, they're about survival. You're not trying to control other people, you're trying to control how much it hurts. You imagine what they might say so you won't be shocked later. You prepare your response so you won't freeze. You rehearse your calm so you won't fall apart. It's a defense, a quiet one, invisible to everyone else, but exhausting for you. You tell yourself it's just thinking, just planning, just being prepared. But it doesn't feel calm, does it? It feels tense, like you're bracing for impact. Like you're standing in front of a door you're afraid to open, listening for footsteps on the other side. Sometimes you imagine conversations that already happened. You replay them. You correct yourself. You say what you wish you'd said. And sometimes you imagine conversations that may never happen at all. Arguments that never come. Explanations no one asked for. Defenses against accusations that exist only in your mind. Yet your body reacts as if it's real. Your stomach tightens, your jaw clenches, your breathing changes. Because to your nervous system, it is real. There's a version of you in those imagined moments who is constantly on guard, watching, scanning, listening for danger. Not danger like loud noises or physical threats, but emotional danger, a sigh, a delayed reply, a change in tone. Tiny things that feel huge to you, so you stay one step ahead, or at least you try to. You imagine what they'll say, then what you'll say, then how they'll react to that. Then how you respond again. It's like a chess game played entirely in your head, and you're playing both sides. You don't do this because you're dramatic. You do it because at some point, being unprepared hurt. Maybe you were caught off guard once. Maybe someone misunderstood you and didn't ask for clarification. Maybe you spoke honestly and it didn't land the way you hoped. So now, you prepare. Not because you want to, but because not preparing feels unsafe. There's a part of you that believes if you can just find the right words in advance, you can prevent the pain. And at night, when you're alone, that part gets louder. The world slows down. There's no one asking you anything, no one needing you. And your mind fills the silence with future scenes. You imagine explaining yourself. You imagine defending your intentions. You imagine staying calm while someone misunderstands you. Sometimes you imagine being perfectly articulate, clear, composed. And sometimes you imagine everything falling apart. And even though none of it is happening, you feel all of it. That's the part that's hard to explain to other people. How tiring it is to live so much of your life in moments that haven't happened. Don't just live today. You live tomorrow, and next week, and next year. All at once, in your head. There's a strange loneliness in that, because no one sees it. They see you sitting quietly. They see you staring at the ceiling. They think you're resting. But inside, you're working overtime. You're anticipating, predicting, preparing. And the defense mechanism doesn't feel like protection anymore. It feels like, wait, you want to stop imagining. But stopping feels like letting your guard down. And what if something happens then? So you keep going. You imagine the conversation where you finally say what you need to say. Where you're finally understood. Where they nod and say, oh, I get it now. That version is comforting for a moment, but it never lasts. Because your mind immediately asks, what if they don't? What if they interrupt you? What if they misunderstand again? What if they pull away? And just like that, the scene rewinds and starts over. There's a quiet sadness in realizing how much energy goes into this. How much of your emotional life is spent preparing for moments instead of being in them. You don't notice it during the day. You're functional. You smile. You respond. But at night, when everything slows down, you feel it. The exhaustion, the mental fatigue, the sense that your mind never truly rests. And here's something you may have never put into words. Those imagined conversations aren't about the future. They're about the past. About moments when you didn't feel safe expressing yourself. About times when being honest led to confusion or distance. About learning slowly that clarity doesn't always guarantee connection. So now you prepare. You pre-explain. You pre-defend. You pre-feel the hurt. Because feeling it ahead of time feels better than being blindsided. It's not a flaw. It's a response, a way your mind learned to protect you. But protection has a cost. And you feel that cost most when you're alone with your thoughts. You might notice it right before sleep. That moment when your body is tired, but your mind refuses to slow down. You replay future conversations like lullabies that never end, each one slightly different, each one ending in uncertainty. And you lie there staring into the dark, wondering why your mind won't let you rest. It's because it thinks it's doing something important. It thinks if it just runs the scenario one more time, you'll be safe. And the hardest part is this. Even when nothing bad happens, even when the conversation goes fine, your mind doesn't relax. It moves on to the next one because the defense never learned how to turn itself off. And now, as you're listening to this, there might be a quiet recognition settling in. A feeling of being seen in a way that's slightly uncomfortable. That's okay. You don't need to do anything with it yet. Just notice it. Notice how familiar this all feels, how deeply ingrained. And take a breath. Not to fix anything, not to change anything, just to be here. Because there's more to this, and it goes deeper than preparation. Let's stay with it a little longer. You know that moment right after you imagine a future conversation, when there's a brief pause, a kind of emptiness. That's the moment most people miss. Because right there, there's grief. Grief for conversations that haven't happened yet. Grief for understanding you're not sure you'll receive. Grief for the version of you that just wants to speak without rehearsing. You don't often name it that way. But your body feels it. That heaviness in your chest. That ache behind your eyes. That quiet sense of longing. You're not just imagining conversations. You're imagining safety. And sometimes you're realizing how rare that is felt. You learned early on that words matter. That tone matters. That timing matters. So you became careful, thoughtful, precise. And now your mind doesn't know how to be spontaneous anymore. It doesn't know how to trust that things will unfold okay with that. Intervention. So it intervenes preemptively. In the quiet. In the dark. In your head. There's something tender about that. Even if it's exhausting, because it means you care deeply about connection. About being understood. About not hurting or being hurt. Even when it costs you peace. You don't imagine future conversations because you enjoy them. You imagine them because you're trying to protect something fragile inside you. And maybe for the first time, you can let that be true. Without judgment. Just noticing. You're allowed to notice how tired you are. How much you carry. And you're allowed to sit with that realization. Without rushing to change it. Because tonight, you don't need to be prepared. You don't need to rehearse. For this moment, nothing is required of you. Just listening. Just breathing. Just being here. And maybe that's enough. And yet, even when you tell yourself that's enough, your mind doesn't fully believe it. Because silence has never felt neutral to you. Silence feels like space where something could go wrong. So even now, as you sit with this quiet moment, there's a subtle tension, a readiness, like you're waiting for the next thought to arrive. And it always does, another imagined scene. Another future moment, another version of you explaining yourself carefully. It's almost automatic, like breathing, like blinking. You don't consciously choose it. Your mind just slides into it. And if you pause long enough, you might notice something else underneath the thoughts. A younger part of you, not a memory exactly, more like a feeling, the feeling of needing to be ready, of needing to anticipate. of needing to stay one step ahead so you don't get hurt again. You might not remember the first time this started. Most people don't. It wasn't one big moment. It was many small ones. Moments where you spoke and felt misunderstood. Moments where your intention didn't match how it landed. Moments where you wished you could rewind and say it better. So your mind learned to rewind before things even happen. It learned to imagine the conversation first, as a way of saying, next time I'll be ready. And that sounds reasonable, protective, smart even. But what your mind never learned is when to stop. So it keeps going. Long after the danger has passed. Long after the conversation is over. Long after you're alone in your bed at night. You replay future conversations with people who aren't there. You feel emotions that haven't been triggered yet. You brace yourself for outcomes that may never come. And your body follows along, as if it all matters right now. There's a strange thing about this defense mechanism. It creates the illusion of control, but it slowly steals your sense of presence. You're rarely fully in the moment. Part of you is always a few steps ahead, checking the ground for cracks. And that part of you is tired. Not just mentally tired, emotionally tired. Because it's always on watch. You might notice it in conversations, how you're listening, but also preparing your response, how you're smiling, but also analyzing their tone, how you're present, but not fully relaxed. And later, when you're alone, you replay it all. What they meant, what you should have said, what might happen next time. It never really ends. And the hardest part isn't the thinking itself. It's the emotional residue it leaves behind. That subtle feeling of never being fully at ease. Of always needing to explain, to clarify, to make sure nothing is misunderstood. You might even feel guilty for this, like you're overreacting, like you should be able to just let things go. But guilt only adds another layer, another conversation to imagine, another version of you defending why you feel the way you do. So the loop continues. And here's something quietly important. You don't imagine future conversations because you don't trust other people. You do it because you don't trust what will happen to you emotionally if things go wrong. You're not afraid of disagreement. You're afraid of the aftermath, the distance, the awkwardness, the unspoken tension. So you try to smooth the path in advance. In your head. Again and again, there's a loneliness in that kind of vigilance. Because no one sees how much effort goes into staying composed. They see you as calm, thoughtful, put together. They don't see the nights where your mind won't let you rest. Where imagined conversations blur into one another, where you feel emotionally drained before the day has even started. And sometimes you wonder what it would feel like to not do this, to not rehearse, to not anticipate, to not carry every possible outcome inside you. But that idea feels risky, almost reckless, because preparation feels like safety. Even when it hurts, there's a quiet paradox here. The very thing that once protected you is now the thing keeping you tense. And you don't need to label it. You don't need to fix it tonight. Just noticing it, truth can feel heavy enough. You might notice a softness in your chest as you hear this, or maybe a tightening. Both are okay. Because recognizing a pattern that's been with you for so long can feel like losing something familiar. Even if that thing was exhausting, you've lived this way for years, imagining, rehearsing, preparing. It's part of how you survived emotionally, how you stayed connected, how you avoided deeper pain. So if there's sadness here, it makes sense. Sadness for how hard you've worked. Sadness for how little rest you've allowed yourself. And maybe, just maybe, there's also a quiet compassion emerging. Not loud, not dramatic, just a gentle understanding that you didn't choose this out of weakness. You chose it out of care. Care for relationships, care for meaning, care for being understood. And that says something tender about you, even if it's cost you peace. Right now, as this part comes to an end, nothing needs to change. You don't need to promise yourself you'll stop imagining. You don't need to force your mind into silence. That would only create another inner argument, another conversation to rehearse. Instead, just notice where you are. Notice the room, the quiet, the fact that in this moment, nothing is being asked of you, No explanation needed. No defense required. Just a human being resting in the dark with their thoughts and a little more understanding than before. And if your mind drifts back into future conversations after this, that's okay. You can let them pass like distant radio noise, not something you need to tune into right now. Because for this moment, you're safe enough to rest. And maybe that realization, soft and subtle, will stay with you longer than you expect. Not as a lesson, not as a rule. Just a quiet feeling that you don't always have to be ready, that sometimes being here is enough.